California Governor Gavin Newsom just dropped a bombshell that could reshape the entire 2026 election landscape. In a dramatic escalation of America's redistricting wars, Newsom has called for a special election to redraw California's congressional maps, and it's all about fighting back against what he calls Trump's power grab in Texas. We're talking about a high-stakes political chess match that could determine control of the House of Representatives for years to come. So what exactly is Newsom planning? And why is this move sending shockwaves through both parties? Let's break it down. First, let's understand what triggered this unprecedented move. President Trump has been pressuring Republican-controlled states to redraw their congressional maps mid-decade, something that typically only happens after the census every 10 years. Texas Republicans have answered that call, moving forward with plans to eliminate 5 Democratic seats and hand them to the GOP. This isn't just about Texas gaining seats, it's about Republicans trying to lock in their razor-thin House majority before the 2026 midterms, when historical trends typically favor the party out of power. But the redistricting battle is unfolding against a backdrop of unprecedented federal enforcement actions that are reshaping communities across the country. Just this week, we witnessed dramatic scenes following Trump's federal takeover of the Metropolitan Police Department.
The president declared a crime emergency in the District of Columbia, federalized the D.C. Police Department, and mobilized the D.C. National Guard to end violent crime in our nation's capital. As part of the president's massive law enforcement surge, last night, approximately 850 officers and agents were surged across the city. They made a total of 23 arrests, including multiple other contacts. Last night, these arrests consisted of homicide, firearms offenses, possession with intent to distribute narcotics, fare evasion, lewd acts, stalking, possession of a high-capacity magazine, fleeing to a lewd in a vehicle, no permits, driving under the influence, reckless driving, and a bench warrant. A total of 6 illegal handguns were seized off of District of Columbia streets as part of last night's effort. This is only the beginning. Over the course of the next month, the Trump administration will relentlessly pursue and arrest every violent criminal in the district who breaks the law, undermines public safety, and endangers law-abiding Americans.
The new enforcement priorities have sent shockwaves through immigrant communities nationwide. In response to these aggressive tactics, protests erupted across California and beyond.
Dozens of federal agents, some on horseback, swept through the park. Mayor Karen Bass confronting them and calling the move a fear tactic. Then last week, an ICE raid called Operation Trojan Horse. Federal agents showing up to a Home Depot near MacArthur Park in a Penske truck, arresting 16 undocumented people.
Today, the community is taking back the park peacefully, but also sending a very strong message that Angelenos will not stand for this type of racist immigration enforcement activities.
We want ICE out of our communities, kidnapping our friends and our family members.
The human impact of these policies became starkly visible when federal agents detained approximately 20 people outside a Home Depot in North Hollywood.
At least 20 people were detained outside in this parking lot in front of the Home Depot this morning. We do have video we want to show you. This was shared by a witness who was here and saw this all unfold. You can see what appears to be a person detained being walked through the lot by a federal agent. Then a car pulls up, and that person is placed inside. This happened around 9:30 this morning. You can see in the cell phone video federal agents that appear to be armed standing next to their truck as people are gathering video, and there's also what appears to be protesters standing outside on the other side of this fence. As these immigration operations continue, especially at local Home Depots, some leaders are calling for more transparency. Today, a group of congressional leaders were able to see the conditions detainees face at the detention center in downtown LA. They say it was concerning they weren't allowed to take photos or videos inside and were required to give a 7-day advance notice.
These operations aren't just affecting undocumented immigrants. American citizens are getting caught up in the enforcement net too. Brian Gavidia, a U.S. citizen and Trump voter, described being pushed against a wall and demanded proof of citizenship.
We the People has been on 29-year-old Brian Gavidia's back for 6 years, but it wasn't until this moment that he says made him really understand what it meant.
Every time I see it on video, it just It's like a bad memory in my brain, 100%.
Agents were conducting an operation outside his shop on June 12th.
I just went to go look. Honestly, did not know it was a crime to go look.
The video shows one agent pushing Brian up against the wall and demanding he prove his citizenship.
I truly believe I was a target because of my race. I believe I was racially profiled. I believe I was attacked because I was walking while brown.
He says agents held him, took his phone and real ID that proved he was a citizen, and eventually released him, giving back his phone but never his ID. Brian said he was shaken but also empowered.
Where's the freedom? Where's the justice? We live in America. We should be free. We should have justice.
The scale of these operations was supposed to be even larger. Army Major General Scott Sherman revealed in court testimony this week.
Was actually supposed to be an even bigger spectacle. But Army Major General Scott Sherman, who oversaw military operations for the Guard in LA, testified that he overruled that plan, telling the court there were too many people in the park on Father's Day when it was originally planned, and that could pose a safety concern. He says he told federal law enforcement that military personnel and vehicles would have to remain outside the park, only playing supporting roles to control traffic, and that a request to use helicopters would attract potentially violent protests. Ultimately, the plan was scaled back.
Meanwhile, the immigration court system is buckling under the pressure, with over 3 million cases pending and hearings being scheduled as far out as 2028.
Last I looked, I had a hearing set for an individual hearing just recently, and that was scheduled for 2028.
In a nutshell, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We have an immigration system that's antiquated and it's outdated.
Now back to Newsom's redistricting gambit. The California governor announced Thursday that he's moving forward with what he calls the Election Rigging Response Act, a ballot measure that would appear before voters in November if the state legislature approves it. The plan would temporarily bypass California's independent redistricting commission and allow Democrats to draw new congressional lines that could flip 5 or 6 Republican-held seats blue. It's a direct counterpunch to Texas, designed to neutralize whatever gains Republicans make there. We're not going to unilaterally disarm in the state of California, Newsom declared at a press conference, flanked by Democratic legislative leaders and even Texas Democrats who fled their state to block the GOP redistricting effort. We're calling for a special election to redraw our congressional maps and defend fair representation. The governor made it clear this is a reactive measure, saying California will only proceed if Texas follows through with its redistricting plans. But here's where it gets complicated. Unlike Texas, where the Republican-controlled legislature can simply vote to redraw maps, California has an independent citizens redistricting commission that was created specifically to prevent partisan gerrymandering. Voters approved this system in 2008 for state legislative districts and expanded it to congressional maps in 2010. It's been held up as a national model for fair redistricting. Now Newsom wants to temporarily set it aside, but only through a public vote. The mechanics are intricate but crucial. California lawmakers return from summer recess on August 18th and have until August 22nd to place the measure on the November 4th ballot. That's an incredibly tight timeline, but Democratic legislative leaders are already expressing support. Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas said he anticipates releasing a new Democratic-favored map next week, giving voters a chance to see exactly what they'd be approving. The stakes couldn't be higher. Republicans currently hold just 9 of California's 52 House seats, but those seats are strategically important. A successful Democratic gerrymander could target vulnerable Republicans like Representative Kevin Kiley, who has already announced plans to introduce federal legislation prohibiting mid-decade redistricting. We have redistricting done once a decade for a reason, Kiley argued. Gerrymandering, wherever it occurs, is not a good thing. But the political reality is that Democrats feel they have no choice. Texas Republicans are expected to gain up to 5 additional seats with their new maps, potentially making it much easier for the GOP to hold on to their slim House majority, despite the typical midterm backlash against the president's party. For Democrats still reeling from their 2024 losses, neutralizing those gains feels existential. The irony isn't lost on anyone. California Democrats are essentially proposing to temporarily abandon the very reforms they've championed for years, independent, nonpartisan redistricting, in order to fight what they see as Republican cheating. It's a classic prisoner's dilemma: stick to your principles and potentially lose, or abandon them temporarily to level the playing field. Newsom has tried to frame this as a temporary emergency measure. The proposed ballot language would reaffirm California's commitment to independent redistricting after the 2030 census, while allowing voters to temporarily adjust congressional maps for the next several election cycles. It includes trigger language that would only activate the new maps if Texas or other Republican states proceed with their own redistricting efforts. The governor even sent a letter to Trump on Monday, giving the president a deadline to call off Republican redistricting efforts in exchange for California standing down. When Trump didn't respond, Newsom announced he was moving full steam ahead, mocking the president's social media style in his own statement. Donald Taco Trump, as many call him, missed the deadline. California will now draw new, more beautiful maps. But this isn't just about California and Texas. Other Democratic-controlled states are watching closely, though their options are more limited. New York, Washington, and Colorado all have independent or bipartisan redistricting commissions that would make partisan gerrymandering difficult. Illinois Democrats already maximized their advantage after 2020, holding 14 of the state's 17 congressional districts. Maryland Democrats control 7 of 8 seats, but face legal challenges to further gerrymandering. That makes California's potential contribution all the more significant. With 52 House seats, it's by far the largest delegation, and even a modest shift could have major national implications. Political analysts suggest that if both Texas and California proceed with their plans, the net effect might roughly cancel out. But that's assuming both efforts succeed. The legal challenges are already mounting. Former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who championed the creation of California's Independent Redistricting Commission, has announced his opposition to Newsom's plan. Charles Munger Jr., the wealthy scientist who bankrolled the original ballot measures creating the commission, is also reportedly opposed. Republican gubernatorial candidate Steve Hilton is threatening lawsuits to stop any new map. There are also practical concerns about the timeline. Even if voters approve the measure in November, implementing new maps in time for the 2026 elections would require overcoming potential litigation and the complex process of actually drawing new districts that comply with federal voting rights laws. Any prolonged court battle could prevent the new maps from taking effect, even with voter approval. The political dynamics are fascinating to watch. This redistricting war has actually unified Democrats in ways that seemed impossible just months ago. The party has been plagued by infighting and historically low approval ratings, but the prospect of Republican gains through gerrymandering has brought together everyone from progressive activists to moderate lawmakers. Meanwhile, the national implications extend far beyond congressional seats. This is really about the broader question of democratic norms and whether the traditional rules of American politics still apply. For decades, redistricting happened once every 10 years after the census. Both parties played within those rules, even when they didn't like the results. Trump's push for mid-decade redistricting represents a fundamental break with that tradition. The timing is particularly significant given the broader political context. We're seeing unprecedented developments in multiple areas, from immigration enforcement to federal intervention in local policing. This represents a broader pattern of norm-breaking and institutional changes that are reshaping American governance. The redistricting wars are just one front in a larger battle over the rules of democracy itself. When one side breaks the traditional constraints, it creates pressure on the other side to respond in kind, potentially creating a spiral of escalating norm violations. Looking ahead, the next few weeks will be crucial. California lawmakers need to act quickly to get the measure on the November ballot, while Texas Democrats continue their efforts to delay or block the GOP redistricting push. The outcome could set precedents that reshape American polity, ICS, for decades to come. If both states proceed, we could be looking at a new era of permanent redistricting warfare, where maps are redrawn whenever one party sees political advantage. That would represent a fundamental shift away from the stability and predictability that has characterized American elections for generations. The broader question is whether American democratic institutions can survive this level of partisan warfare. Independent redistricting commissions were supposed to be part of the solution to excessive partisanship, removing the temptation for politicians to draw their own districts. But if those reforms can be easily circumvented whenever the political stakes get high enough, what does that say about the durability of democratic norms? Newsom clearly believes he has no choice. We're doing this in reaction to a president of the United States that called a sitting governor of the state of Texas and said, "Find me 5 seats," he explained. We cannot unilaterally disarm. It's a compelling argument in the short term, but the long-term consequences for American democracy remain unclear. What we do know is that the 2026 midterms are shaping up to be unlike anything we've seen before. Between potential new congressional maps in multiple states, ongoing immigration enforcement changes, and the broader political realignment happening across the country, voters will be facing choices that could determine the direction of American politics for years to come. The redistricting wars that Gavin Newsom just escalated are only the beginning of what promises to be a transformative political year.